Hello and welcome to this webinar on homework. I'm David Marshall and I'm the Deputy Head Teaching and Learning. And with me,
I'm Tom Edwards. I'm the Professional Development and Research Lead and I teach Year 1.
And so we are talking about homework this time because there's been a few questions about how homework works and why we do homework and what's it all about. So we're going to hopefully answer all of those questions now and more. And I first want to start off with talking a little bit about why we do homework. So as a school which relies quite heavily on research for our understanding of what we do in the classroom and what we do outside the classroom, we look at the big metadata out there, and one of them is this data from John Hattie, who looks at what works across different things in education. One of the things that he's looked at is homework, and he gives these effect sizes. So the effect size he puts on homework is 0.29. Out of context, that doesn't mean anything, but what effectively it means is that as opposed to other teaching things that could be done, that effect size is moderate to relatively high. But the difference with homework is that as opposed to something else, such as like a trip that takes children out of the classroom, so they would be losing curriculum time on maths or English, homework is this extra thing. So there's no opportunity cost. It's done at home, which takes up your time as parents, but in the sense of learning, it doesn't take up any other time. So in that sense, I would consider this effect size of homework as being quite significantly high. Another way of looking at that would be to say that it's like worth 2 terms of learning at a prep school level. So we see homework as being important. We see it as being valuable. There are certain ways in which homework is done which makes it more significant. So for example, homework that's generally shorter, homework that is consolidating or revising, sometimes pre-teaching material, and homework that may be something like multiple choice. These are often the most impactful homeworks in terms of learning because they are consolidating what has already been taught in the classroom largely. And we would also just say one thing which we'll talk a bit more about in a minute, which is that it's generally most impactful as an independent task, or mostly independent, that's done by the child. In that sense, though, homework is this thing that's like classwork, but it's done at home. So it's this very collaborative thing that works between teachers, children, and parents. This is why it's such a hot topic. It always comes up in schools. You'll find lots of people have got lots of thoughts about it, children not least, about what homework is and when it should be done. We're hoping to demystify a few of those in the course of this webinar. Tom, I don't know if you want to talk a bit about cycles of learning.
Absolutely. So, we've said already that homework doesn't have an opportunity cost. It's this additional learning opportunity within the cycle of learning. So if I take a Year 1 topic, for example, if we're teaching addition and subtraction within 20, we might teach a concept, revise that concept by doing a classroom activity, a project or some group work or something like that, and then we'd set a directed homework task based on what we've already been doing, which the children can then independently use to consolidate their learning at home. The benefit of that is that it gives us this direct feedback loop between what we've taught in the classroom and what they have recalled and remembered, which we'll get onto a little bit more later on. The most important thing, and the thing that we keep coming back to, is homework should be directly linked to what we have already been doing and directly linked to classroom learning, as opposed to delivering new concepts at home outside of the school setting.
Yeah. And that's something I think that you won't see every single homework doing that, because there are obviously going to be different kinds of homework. There's going to be some standalone homework which is very creative and very kind of research based, which may not look like consolidation of classroom, and that's okay as long as the majority of homework has got this sort of consolidation focus to it. We're going to talk a little bit about the practicalities of the homework. A lot of questions that come up when we talk to parents about homework are about timing and how much parents should help. And these are obviously ones that are going to vary according to year groups. So for example, Year 1, I believe, you suggest no longer than 20 minutes, is that right, set on homework? Year 5 say no more than 30 minutes. And with that 10-minute difference, it doesn't seem like there's, Year 1 and Year 5 are many years apart. Why only 10 minutes difference? And that's largely because obviously the homework is getting more challenging, and we still don't want children to be spending a long time working on the homework. One thing we say very categorically is please do not spend extra time on that homework. There is no need for children to be going largely over that time. So in year 5, if you're spending 35 minutes or even 40 minutes, that's probably fine. But if you're spending an hour, that's really eating into the time you need to be doing for other things. And we know all those things that children do at home, not least just having some time off, because the working day is really busy. So we don't want a child to work until they finish a piece. They work for that limit of that time they're given and then stop. And this goes also with helping. It can be very difficult to watch your child struggling with homework if they are struggling. We do scaffold, or we do differentiate to make sure that the homework is accessible independently, but we know sometimes that's not always going to be the case. And there's an inclination to want to help your child with the homework. We don't say don't do that, but what we say is that obviously don't do the homework for them. And how that help looks is it's most effective if it's just a bit of coaching, a bit of questioning. I'm sure this is what you do already if you help. But we want the child to be mostly doing it independently, because that effect size that I talked about at the beginning, that 0.29, that's only when the child is thinking and doing something independently. The more that they're helped with something, tutoring or parent help, the effect size actually drops. Again, it comes back to the fact that this is generally homework as revising material, and I think that, have I missed anything out there with that, Tom, or is there anything else we need to add?
I think it's really important to drive home that feedback loop thing that we've sort of loosely mentioned already. Is we get the most feedback and the most sort of beneficial feedback for the pupil's progress and the teacher's planning of what we're doing, and our ability to help the children master different concepts when the children have completed their homework tasks independently within the time that they've set. And then if they haven't, that's been communicated to the teachers, because I think something that can get a bit confused sometimes is this piece of homework must be finished within this 20 minutes. So we're going to let the child do it for 15 or so, and if they're finding it really challenging, we'll then help them to complete it in those 20 minutes. And we get so much from knowing and being told and having it mentioned that the child has found it challenging, because then we know what we can pick up in class, we know what we can then work a little bit more on, we might provide some more homework based on that topic to provide a bit more practice. So it just tells us a lot more, which is really beneficial for our overall sort of planning and teaching.
Yeah, we learn far more from incorrect answers or homework not completed than we do from a full set of correct answers that's then been gone over with a parent. And of course, the more you're helping with your child with the homework, the longer it's going to take, effectively, because then it becomes not just a revision activity, it becomes something that you are working through with them, and that just takes a lot longer. The other thing I'd mention, and I know this is probably saying something really obvious, but it's just about having that quiet space to do the homework, having somewhere that's got a desk where the seating position is right so they can practice their pen grip that they're using in school. All these little things can make a big difference. That being said, we know that life is very busy, that sometimes finding the right time and place to do the homework isn't always easy. I have a friend who has discovered that her child is just too tired. She's a teacher and a parent. Her child is just too tired in the evenings to do the spellings, so they do them on the way to school in the morning, and that just works for them. So finding that way that works for you, and maybe not having an idea that everybody is out there doing it perfectly, or has this sort of pristine system of doing homework that somehow you're missing out on. It's just not true. Life is very busy. Clubs are important. Extracurricular activity is important, and rest is super important. And hopefully what we're saying here is just about finessing and advising about sort of the time and the support that's given, rather than fundamentally recommending you change anything about the way you do it. And now I think we are going to talk about what we said.
Absolutely. So homework looks different across the prep school, as I'm sure you're aware. Initially, it's phased in towards the end of the Michaelmas term in reception, and then in year 1 and 2 we teach and deliver rotational homeworks based on the core subjects, so English, Maths and Topic, in addition to practicing those key early skills, handwriting and spelling. The spelling carries on, and potentially handwriting practice if needed, sort of further into year 3, 4, 5 and 6. There is a step up in the homework in year 3 to sort of blend into the remainder of the years in the prep school. And then in year 4, 5 and 6, you'll have, again, increases in, I suppose, difficulty and challenge of the homework in reflection with the improving abilities of the pupils. And one thing that David mentioned earlier on was that we differentiate the homework based on making it as accessible as possible and potentially needs of different pupils. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that it's just, there's a understanding that while we can't create a homework for every single child that's different for every child, that wouldn't be possible for teachers. We are aware that different children will have some levels of different ability. So if a child needs it, a homework can be differentiated. That doesn't necessarily mean making it easier, and in fact we'd say it shouldn't be made easier, it should just be made more accessible, and that's the key thing. There are lots of different ways that teachers and TAs do this. One of them, for example, if there's a comprehension, might be ensuring that the comprehension is available online and that the child can use immersive reader so that the story is read to them, which again just solves that accessibility. While the homework itself may be the same level of difficulty as everyone else, they're still getting that learning challenge. It just means that they can get into it in a way they maybe wouldn't have been able to. In the same way, if there's a need for a stretch and challenge, there might be an additional question, like a metacognitive question that's added on to get them thinking about it, or some extra task. That extra task shouldn't be something that goes beyond the 20 minutes. This is really for those children who need something more. And if you find your child is speeding through, say, a maths homework in 10 minutes when it should be taking 20 minutes, the question I would be asking them is really, are they doing it thoroughly? Are they really making sure they've done their working out? Are they making sure that they've written full sentences, written all of the, put in all of the full stops and capital letters? So doing the homework thoroughly is an aspect of the homework, and it doesn't necessarily mean they need an extension task or a stretch and challenge if they're doing it really quickly. It may just mean there's a bit of more looking at how that homework is being done in a thorough way. So these are all aspects of it, but in terms of the teachers and TAs working in school to set the homework, we are thinking deeply about this all the time in terms of differentiating it.
Brilliant. As David and I have mentioned previously, homework should represent a consolidation opportunity for your child. So we're doing it thoroughly, we are creating that sort of supportive and, I suppose, calm and productive environment as much as we can to then allow those produced pieces of homework to give teachers and pupils the best feedback to then progress forward and move learning forward. They need to see acknowledgement of their learning. So we have acknowledged marking is quite common, usually by TAs in the different classes, and then as I've said already, that provides pupils directed feedback on what they need to practice. It provides teachers directed feedback on what they need to plan into their lessons, as opposed to just assuming that it's all been fine because the homework's been set, returned, and then we can move on. It's best for us to try and master each of these concepts. It's also incredibly important for us to validate the pupils' effort. I think they need to see a meaning to homework as much as we do, because we can run a webinar and explain how purposeful and important homework is, but the pupils also need that. So especially important for things like science and art projects, they put an incredible amount of effort in. If it's a research project, they've gone away and got really deep into a topic and found out lots of different things. It's important for us to validate their effort and then provide opportunities for them to use those pieces and use those skills further down the line.
Yeah, and we use technology as well to aid us. So teachers have been advised that in general we would recommend a piece of homework once a week to be done online. So for something like Century Tech or research, that's not always possible. Sometimes you might find there are more than one. But with the online tasks, let's take Century Tech as an example, this is an incredibly powerful tool. It fulfills what a homework is supposed to do in terms of impact and effect, often because the questions are multiple choice, often because the precision of timing, and because it's consolidating or revising something that's been done in class. So Century Tech is a really useful thing, and the other great thing about it is, just linking to Tom, your point about feedback, is that the Sentry Tech can provide feedback about how the child's done that homework, and also how multiple children have done the homework. If everyone got question 5 wrong, they need to go back and revise that thing. So the feedback that the child gets, whether it's online or not, may not be visible to you or even to the children, but it might be that there's a lesson plan that's going over that topic that they all need to revise. It's identifying that misconception. In that sense, just be reassured that the feedback loop is an operation, and feedback occurs in lots of different ways, from classwork, but also from homework as well.
Fantastic. One thing I can add there is we might potentially use technology in class and recommend. I know we have definitely in year 1 recommended certain websites and really, really great practice tools for key skills and fluency and lots of different things. A great example would be using games like Hit the Button on Top Marks for number bonds. So there are loads of different technology opportunities that we can use to support the key skills and those practice of fluency in different things. I think it's important for us to remember that the homework being informative for teaching, informative for the pupils, and directly linked to whatever we've been doing in class is the most important thing.
Definitely, and we're not a school that say no technology. We embrace technology, but we also say it's all about balance. And recently, I was in a parent teaching and learning committee meeting where we were talking about technology and about how this is all used at home. And from my understanding of that meeting, parents were supportive of the way this is being used in school. And it's just all about kind of ensuring that it is purposeful, it is revising the work, and also that it's active learning. It's not the same as being passively on a device. It's about using that technology to engage your brain and think and really enjoy and love learning, which we know all of these things can help us do in moderation. But I'm now going to talk about something which is not really technology, unless of course you use Kindle, which is reading. It's a favourite topic of mine, being an English teacher, and 2026 is the National Year of Reading. So parents ask, what can I do at home with my child? If I can't help them with their homework, what can I do? And the answer is read. So read with your child, read to your child, listen to them read, ask questions about the books they're reading, and get them to ask you questions as well. Audiobooks are great, Kindle's great, graphic novels are great, but just the sheer act of reading to and with your child is super impactful. There is evidence from the government and other agencies that show that since the pandemic, there's been a drop in parents reading with their children. This often happens particularly when parents see that their child can read independently, and then there's a sort of drop off with that regular reading. Now we do say, around 15 minutes a night reading, but if you can do more, that would be great. But the really valuable thing is that interaction with the reading when you can. Now we know that parents are very busy as well, and you, for example, might be travelling for work, but there are ways around this. It might be having the same book on the go, and you're both reading the same book. You have a FaceTime or a Zoom call where you talk about the book, you talk about what you liked, you disliked, the patterns and connections and things like that. Whatever it is, just reading will make a huge difference now in terms of vocabulary, in terms of knowledge of structure and plots and writing, and it'll have a big impact on GCSE as well. Again, there's loads of research out there to show the power of this. I feel I'm preaching to the converted. I know that I'm not alone, and everyone will be nodding their heads and agreeing with this, but I just while talking about homework, I think you can't not mention reading. I don't know, Tom, is there anything else you want to say about that from a Key Stage 1 perspective particularly?
I think communicating with teachers and sort of professionals at school is a great way of finding out different pieces of advice and tips and tricks for extending that reading. So if you're finding it potentially challenging to find consistent reading slots, or if you only seem to have that sort of story time at the end of the day, there are so many other opportunities. You might ask them to help you read a recipe, you might look at a magazine cover or a headline or something like that, and before you know it, you've built in 20-30 minutes of reading throughout the day in different pieces. As David said earlier on, it's finding what works for you and finding ways to achieve the sort of learning outcomes and provide those learning opportunities in any way that you can.
I'm just going to throw a curveball here at you. favourite book for Key Stage 1 child that you would recommend?
My favourite book is We Have a Plan by Chris Horton.
Love Chris Horton.
It's absolutely fantastic.
Great writer, Chris Horton. I think he did Oh No, George,
Yes.
if I'm thinking rightly. My favourite would be, I think You Can't Beat Where the Wild Things Are, by Maurice Sendak. There's so much in that text. Both these, as yours, it's a picture book.
Yes.
Yeah. Picture books, absolutely fantastic, valuable reading material. And yeah, so loads of books to be out there to read, and just keep enjoying it. So before we finish, I just want to say that all of the information about homework, along with curriculum and anything else you would want, is in the handbooks, which were sent at the beginning of they're sent at the end of last academic year. If you have any further questions we haven't answered, you can get hold of me via the Prep School office, just email in. But otherwise, from both of us, I'd say thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much.